Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. So, I don't talk about television particularly often on this channel, mainly because I don't watch it particularly often, but I, like millions of other people, really love Game of Thrones. I was very excited for this new season, and finally it's here. The Season 8 premiere aired just last night. I watched it live, and I wanted to get some thoughts out on it. But before we talk about the recent episode of Game of Thrones, let's talk about the previous season of Game of Thrones, Season 7, which I think is very interesting because it suffers from the opposite of what most shows suffer from, which is called jumping the shark. So they extend material for a very long time, longer than it should go, and then it just goes off the rails. Such as Walking Dead. But Game of Thrones Season 7, it's sort of rushed a little bit. I think that they could easily extend this material for 2 or 3 more seasons, full-length seasons, with just what they had planned, and it would be completely fine. But in Season 7, it's a 7-episode season, fairly long episodes, but still, you have characters in one place, and then, boop, they're at the next location in a few minutes, which is just a little disappointing because what I loved about the show before is that it wasn't afraid to just slow down, take its time, but it wasn't ever boring. Game of Thrones Season 7 was, still very solid, but you could definitely tell that they weren't working off of George R.R. Martin's material, and they just wanted to end it real soon, I guess, which I didn't think really needed to happen. And so how that relates to this new season is, we sort of open with Arya. She's acting very differently from how she did in the last season. I mean, she was sort of feuding with Sansa, and then that turned out to be a ruse so they could get Littlefinger, which I thought was very stupid. And another example of Littlefinger couldn't show up in this season, with this conflict, wouldn't really mesh very well, so they're like, okay, Sansa, Arya feud, that's over, the Littlefinger has to go now. And, that was kind of odd. And so it rubbed me the wrong way to see Arya just acting all heartwarming, where she's been known for being a little bit of a psychopath in the last 2 seasons or so. So, yeah, that was a little off-putting. Other than that, though, I thought this episode really redeemed Game of Thrones a little bit for me. Just, it sort of resolved some of the issues that I had with the last season, which is very interesting because it's the final season, and yet it didn't feel like a ton was happening all at once in one episode. Hopefully that'll still work out for the rest of the season. But I thought that was very nice. This episode was mainly just about, it was mainly took place in Winterfell. It's just uniting different characters after a very long time and just seeing how that would play out. You have Sansa, who, we've seen go through a lot, and she was sort of taking this leadership position, and she wanted Jon to take the throne, and then all of a sudden Jon doesn't want to take the throne anymore, and he's bringing in this Southern Targaryen queen to do everything. And I'm glad that I couldn't detect it at first, like the snark when she said Winterfell is yours, your grace, but I'm really glad they kept that up. It wasn't just all, okay, yep, yeah, everyone accepts it. No, they don't. They have this whole argument. That little Mormont kid did this whole speech. Sansa was talking about, how are we going to feed an army this large? Which I'm glad they addressed, because, like, how do they do that? Like, I mean, soldiers must be pretty dang hungry, so I'm kind of glad they addressed that, because they haven't really done that before. I haven't really seen anything address that before. On top of that, we have, a lot of Jon and Danny interaction. We have that How to Train Your Dragon-esque flying sequence, which I thought was very awesome. And, you know, they're sort of having romantic scenes together. Drogon at one point looks at them just like... We have Bran in this episode, which, you know, people are memeing the crap out of. It's such a departure from how he was in the first season. You know, he was this rambunctious, energetic boy. He was always climbing things, disobeying his parents, you know. And then he's just, in this episode, he just stares blankly at people, judges them, tells them bad things without a hint of sympathy, and he's just sitting in his chair. Like, he's just there, outside. It's very interesting. I mean, he takes himself very seriously, but it's quite comical to the viewer. And also, we have Sam returning. Very glad he returned. And we have him interacting with Danny, basically saying, you know, can I get a pardon? Stole some books. You know, and, you know, he talks about his family. Daenerys asks for the name. He's like, yeah, Tarly. It's like, oh, I burned those people with my dragon. And he's just terrified, and he just runs away. Classic Sam stuff. I will miss that character. You know, I wasn't sure about him first. I was just like, are they really shoving in this character? But I honestly think he fits very nicely within the narrative. He's a very different sort of masculine figure in this show, you know, if that makes any sense. You know, not that Jon is stereotypical or anything. In fact, I really like Jon sort of edging this debate of, like, should I, you know, do things to take titles, you know, the superficial stuff, or should I be concerned about protecting Winterfell? And it's also, like, does my love for Daenerys have anything to do with that? And I was glad that they, you know, talked about all of those things. It was very interesting. I think that's just at the heart of what Game of Thrones does best. Just, you know, sort of talking about these issues in a historical setting and just emphasizing the characters, because we have a lot of great characters in Game of Thrones, and they really highlight it in this episode. One thing that was surprising is that how quickly they got to Jon. Like, you're a Targaryen. Daenerys, you know, is your aunt basically, and like you're the rightful heir to the throne. And you know that last part is mainly what Jon is talking about. Is like, all my life, like, my father has lied to me. You know, Sam's trying to explain. Yeah, but you know, it's, you know, Ned was upholding a promise, and you know, we just have all these recurring themes about honor, loyalty, just, you know, promises, and I think a lot of that just really comes together in this episode. It didn't have to be bombastic, it didn't have to do anything too much, you know, have a little bit of, you know, setting up the conflict, and it will be cool to see, like, which part of the season, you know, like, which episodes are going to deal with, you know, fighting the White Walkers, and which are going to be, you know, fighting for the throne. And that's, it's going to be weird to see how they pull that off in 6 episodes. I know some of them are an hour and 30 minutes long. This one was just an hour. But yeah, also one thing is, it is very interesting, especially recently with how much is going on in Game of Thrones, how they pick their ending. You know, like, in the Season 7 episode, there was just a lot going on, and so you had to pick one exciting development over the others. I think what they went with is the dragons burning down the wall, which, you know, fair. That's pretty notable, I'd say. But this episode, I think, epitomizes what I like about this episode. It's just Bran and Jaime Lannister just staring at each other. And it's weird to think they haven't seen each other since Jaime was, you know, very in love with Cersei and pushed him out a freaking tower window. Yeah, I'm not sure how much Bran is really gonna care about that because he's fairly emotionless these days. But, oh, like, if looks could kill in that moment, oh boy. So yeah, that's my quick sort of Game of Thrones Season 8 premiere review, more like quick thoughts. I'm not going to give any ratings or anything. Let me know what you think. I'm going to maybe do some predictions in future episodes, because I do have some thoughts about how this is all going to turn out based on, you know, sort of these press interviews they've been giving about how the finale is. So yeah, look out for future coverage of this season. You know, it's not something I'm going to do very often, but I thought it was prime time I'd talk about one of my favorite shows. So yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe, and ring the bell if you want to check out the rest of my content. Follow me on Twitter at KrazyKat, capital letters, 451, and follow my Letterboxd, it's KrazyKatYT. Yeah, those are all linked in the description. And as always, I will see you next video. Mighty roar.